The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq 100, we're going to break down exactly where we're at and what's happened. Basically, going today, we didn't really expect too much big behavior, specifically when it relates to volume. As we look at volume, you can see right now, you're at 56 million going into the close, about 8 minutes left on the day with after hours included. I'd anticipate a lower output than yesterday, which was 67 million basically, so around 63, 64 most likely. After hours are typically slowest on Fridays also. So that's where we're at right now. And we didn't, and I just want to understand that before we go into the charts, because it's going to follow directly into that also. When we look at where we're at right now, you can see we came back into that previous demand. This is, yes, our previous demand. It has been invalidated based on this right here, but I want to keep it there so we can see. And we're also finding support at basically this 10.89, 10.9 region overall. We've been bouncing there as a 4-hour chart, so you can see relatively where we're at. That's where we're at right now. Now, on larger time frames, we're still clearly in the downtrend, which we're going to talk more here in the next few minutes. Before we get into that, I have to ask you to do two things: like and subscribe. Every single day, I'm pushing out videos so you know what to expect with this market. You're never surprised by news or anything else like that. Now, it's worth mentioning this week is a 3-day weekend, so you need to understand that also. But before we go into any of that, I have to tell you right now, we are running a sale on the Discord right now. You get access to everything, and it will all be 25% off. That is including the mentorship, lifetime, and everything. That's just for New Year's. So for the next 48 hours, that will be live, 25% off. It should be automatically added, but if not, I believe the code is New Year 25. I'll have the link down below so you know. Just let everyone know. But let's get back to the video. So when we get in here, let's look where we're at right now. So if you see, you're bouncing off this area, you're pushing up. Now, I want to say this right now, and just give you a viewpoint of my trading on the day. It was pretty minimal. Did basically nothing. I thought about trades. Wasn't anything to do. I was like, I'm going to go into the year liquid. That's just what's best for me and my portfolio. Going in any further than that, though, we get a lot of answers based on volume. And if really for a majority of the day, if we go to the 1-hour chart, you can really see, well, actually, we're going to go to a little bit smaller, about the 15-minute on the Nasdaq. For a better part of the day, you did nothing. Okay, I just want to highlight this. So for today, you came out, you opened up roughly right here at about 10.9, did nothing, pushed up a little bit, came back down. So you sat in about a 70-point range up and down. And that's nothing on the Nasdaq. You're not going to get any great trades, nothing from that in my opinion. And it's just, I rely solely on futures to trade. So when we came to this is ultimately what we expected. End of the year, end of the week, going to a 3-day weekend, a lot less volume. Okay, coming into the end of the day, we are getting a little bit of a push up. Food for thought, looks okay, looks decent. But again, when do we want to get confirmation, or how do we know that it's a confirmation of a possible bottom or a trend reversal? Volume, volume, volume. That's going to be your best friend. So that's what we're looking at right now. I also do want to highlight, we did not break above yesterday's highs or anything like that. So we still, in my opinion, don't look great, don't look awesome. Now we go to the 4-hour time frame. We're going to look at ES and SPY also, but I want to highlight, you did make a higher low here. That's the good news. And on today, we made higher lows all day. That was the good news. Okay, want to highlight that. But grand scheme of things, on the 4-hour, 1 day, lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high, and ultimately right now, still a lower high. Going into ES futures, the SPY, less tech oriented. We can see here, you're still kind of holding this little trend, making lower highs also. It's really not the greatest either. You're still just getting rejected. You tried to break over it yesterday, still getting rejected, and kind of making new supply levels along the way, creating bigger resistances as you have to push up once again. That's what we're seeing there. But again, I will say, if you look here on the smaller time frames, you can see on the 4-hour, you are trying to make higher lows. Okay, food for thought, but on the broad scheme of things, the daily, you can still see you're pushing down. Let all that be known. Going to the beginning of the year, it doesn't look terrible as far as potentially getting a bottom, but right now, I still have to side with downside based on where we're at and what's happening. Okay, let that be clear right there. Now, giving you a viewpoint of Bookmap, a lot of people have requested I bring this back, and I didn't get rid of it. I still use it every day. It's just the volume with right now. Bookmap hasn't been as key for me lately as it was before. I still love it, but the volume's just been trash. And so if there's not a lot of volume to look at, then obviously I'm not going to be watching level 2 data as much, especially if I'm not even doing that much trading. Now, Food for thought, though. If we look here at the book, let's talk about what happened here. So we had a few big levels here throughout the day. You saw buyers try to hold us at this range of 38.25. They moved up here to locally 38.30. You broke below again. You made a bottom down at 38.20. Now, what I will say is that we had this range from this morning up here where sellers were not going to let us get above this point. Even when we weren't even close, we had about $20 to get there on ES futures. They still held us there. Coming into the end of the day, where do we test? That level at 38.60. We come up, getting rejected so far. Maybe we get into the push, but so far, no buenos. So if we look also through the beginning of the day, I would like to look at that dark pool data, this blue line down here. You can see we got some buy orders this morning, a little bit of buy orders, about decent size right there. Creeped into lunch a little bit more. And then here at the end of the day, going into New Year's, you're seeing a lot of orders towards the downside, okay? Similar size to the order we saw this morning to the upside. So what do you want to highlight? It's a mixed day overall here. So again, this is why I believe, and that's why I keep saying, Bookmap hasn't been that big for me, just because this volume, again, as you can see here, has been so minimal. Yeah, you have one day at 100 million, but it's been 50, 59, 51, 56, just low decreasing volume to the end of the year. I do believe beginning of the year, we're going to see a spike in volume, most likely next week or the week after, because we do have CPI, I believe, the week after. We have more data points coming out, which I'll give everyone an update going into Sunday or Monday, possibly. So those are things we need to be watching for. A little bit more fundamentally looking at DXY. Again, I know, I can kind of anticipate the questions you guys are going to ask before I even make the video. A lot of people are going to be saying, well, Tyler, DXY, you're kind of losing this level we had down here. And again, you are. But it's important to realize DXY isn't solely moving based on the economy. DXY is moving based on everyone else's economy, if you will. A lot of countries are devaluing the dollar, and it's happening with what we talked about with what's happening with the petrodollar. Okay, we're seeing devaluations because all the oil going through China now is going through the yuan and not through the US dollar. So that's definitely creating devaluing there. Okay, so we need to understand that. This is not all based on the US economy, and people are like, oh, well, DXY is going down, so theoretically markets have to go up. Again, I want people to disconnect DXY as much as possible right now. It's not that big for me. Yes, you're at a big level and you balance and you push the market down a little bit, but I just don't love it as an indicator now. Where I will think it will be important as you get to the 100 market on 100, 101, that's your really big level. If you come down to there, I think there's going to be a lot of inflection points there and a lot of things you have to pay attention to. Now, going a little bit further, I want to talk about yields before we go too much into predictions of next week. You are getting a lot of stagnation. Now, we talked about this last week. We had stagnation coming into this week. And typically what happens from this, as I always say, is when you have stagnation here on these yields, you usually get some really good volatility. Now, this week and last week, it's kind of one of the first times you've seen a 2-week trending of sideways here, right? Almost 3 weeks, if you will, coming to the downside here on yields. This is really interesting to me. You're coming to that higher low potential that we've been making, right? Since basically, 2020, you're pushing up here, still almost inverted. But the big thing I'm watching here is going to be TLT, right? TLT has been a pretty good indicator tracker to see if these bond values on the 10 and 30, the inversion specifically, will come back inverted. Basically, if you have, and you've been watching, right, since 2020, guess what happened? Boom, you've been crushing down TLT, which reflects the inversion as we just saw also here, right? TLT right now is showing weakness throughout this day also. TLT has been one of the best indicators also. When we saw this kind of rounding off on the top, we notified everyone. We're talking about this. We're like, look, the market is coming down. We need to be watching TLT. TLT continues to show weakness. It tells me that the health of the economy is not ideal or where it should be. TLT continues to get hit, and I do believe it's going to break below 99. You have a lot of put orders coming in on this over the coming months, and even the current month of January 20th, I believe, has a lot of orders coming in there. I recommend checking those out on your broker. So, going back, viewpoints, ES, Nasdaq, in the next week, what am I expecting? Because that's ultimately everyone's question here. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to go over stocks I'm liking today. I'll go over those on Sunday or Monday, potentially. But right now on ES, I am looking for downside. I'm going to tell you that right now. Big points here that I love and that I'm really looking forward to. The demand here specifically on ES has not been tested in comparison to NQ, which has been tested and actually got invalidated. So I definitely want to see ES come down further. The sleeper one we haven't been talking about is Dow. And shout out to Cajun. Cajun, got to give you credit in Discord. He's been loving Dow. And he and I, we've been talking about this vaguely. The Dow has not really experienced any pain here, people. If anything, it can be argued that you're making somewhat of a bull flag here on Dow. Okay, you could argue that. I do not think Dow is going to rally through. I don't think it's going to break highs soon. I don't think it's going to happen. It could happen, but I just don't think it's going to. You are making lower lows and lower highs. I do believe the Dow has potential to roll over. DIA for the index, I will say, you need to be watching out for this, right? You're still getting rejected at previous lows around 332, 331 range, right? So be watching out for this. This is probably the strongest area of the SPY that's holding up anything. Anything in these industrials, that's what's holding SPY up right now. Because we can look at something like CAT. You're still basically near all-time highs, right? Look at oil companies. Performing great, right? We talked about all these last week, right? Look at the barrel. Where is it performing based on these oil companies also? Since the Russia stuff, you're still trying to push up, people. You still look decent on the barrel. Barrel's going to probably test 85 rather soon. So if we look at this, those are the companies that are trying to hold the SPY up, okay? Any of those companies inside the SPY also. Food for thought there. Now, going into SPY, I still believe pain is here. If you look where we're at, we're making a basing pattern at this area right now. We kind of found some support. You can't make a higher high here. That's an obvious sign of weakness. On this consolidation, what's happened? Buyers have been weak. Anytime we get a push up, they just get shot back down. Ultimately, the big test here at the end of the week, if you look at it, NQ sitting at 11,000, very weak. That's my viewpoint there. Okay. Anytime buyers try to show up, sellers just push us back down. We consolidate. Also, volume's been very low as buyers have tried to show up. Another red flag. But what I will say, devil's advocate here, I will say you're getting low volume most likely because it's holiday season. You have Christmas last week and then you have New Year's this week, right? Food for thought there. But I do want to highlight we saw very similar price action last year around this time. So we're going to take a really quick push back to last year. What happened? Going basically into the end of the year, we saw a little bit of a sideways action, the 27th basically through the 31st, sideways action, and then the beginning of the year happened and selling occurred, right? That's the pain here, right? That's the bad scenario here. It's worth mentioning too, this is basically a one-year bear market from here all the way to here. It's worth mentioning. Again, this is why I tell people zoom out, zoom out, zoom out. If you look here, clearly still in that downtrend, right? Still very clear. You're not even close to the bottom of the downtrend, which is why, again, I want to see us test that demand down there, right? I at least want to see it before I can even be bullish. I need to see that for myself. And right now, you're still getting rejected and can't even touch any of the supply levels to the upside. That's the red flag area for me personally, okay? That's what we have to be focused on. Now, going further into Qs, you can see Qs, a lot of pain here, a lot of blood. Specifically, last few weeks, a lot of blood that kicked in here. So I definitely think Qs, you're holding down low. You're trying to find some support. I still think blood is in the water. I still believe in pain here. Okay, that's where I'm at. But food for thought, I am liquid. I'm not pushing any plays right now. I'm sitting on my hands, waiting to get that volume because the volume is going to give you your answer, people. That's what you need to pay attention to. Volume, volume, volume. That is what's going to tell you when you're getting the pivot to the downside or you're pivoting back to the upside. That's where you're going to know what you need to do. Volume will tell you. And that's where we've been this whole time. And the biggest thing I can tell you right now, and I mentioned this yesterday, is just be patient. Anytime we've pivoted back to the upside, anytime, we've had multiple days, if not weeks, of upside potential here, right? So there's no need to try to knife grab or slap calls or anything like that, right? You can hedge your position. I recommend hedging. Hedging is an awesome way to mitigate risk if you're trying to play downside here. But I'm just going to tell you right now, I think you are jumping the gun, if you will, if you're slapping the ask on calls or puts, to be honest. But again, you can do a straddle, strangle, anything like that, try to hedge your position. But right now, again, I think patience is the number one thing we need to be practicing specifically. And that's what I'm doing. I'll see you guys on Sunday. Have a good one.